Good morning, everyone. Dear distinguished guests, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, dear friends. I would like to welcome you all. Thank you for coming and joining us for this panel. I'm sure the discussion is going to be very interesting. And at the beginning, I would like to invite you to vote also for our question. So please comment on that one. Let me start also with the first introductory remark regarding Industry 4.0, or smart industry, as we also used to call it. Traditional business models and industry will need to adapt and transform actually to new digital era. This process of transformation and adaptation is often called as fourth industrial revolution. It comes after the steam, after the electric power, and it would be dominated by the power of ICT and Internet of Things. I think the success of implementing this concept would be crucial, would be critical for industries all around the world, for their productivity, for their efficiency. So I'm very happy that actually I have experts who will discuss their experience on this issue with us here today. Let me welcome Mr. Deep Kapuria, who actually brings his expertise from the automotive industry, high-tech, trade, and also public policy sector. He is the chairman of the high-tech group that has a wide portfolio of advanced technology designs and services in the fields of robotics, artificial intelligence, vision, and embedded systems. Welcome. Mr. Ralf Diemer, who has joined us from the German Association of Automotive Industry in Brussels, who has a wide range of experience from the policy fields such as digitalization, connectivity of cars, competitiveness, financial market regulation, and many others. Mr. Stefan Rosina, as the president and the chairman of the board of Matador, a car tire producer here in Slovakia. He has been with the company for more than 2 decades, actually, and held various positions in research, engineering, as well as management. The fourth gentleman, Mr. Radislav Danilák, is also originally from Slovakia. He is currently based actually in San Francisco, running a successful business, Skyra, develop a solid-state storage system for scale-out cloud and enterprise data centers. Thank you for making this trip and be here with us today. I would like to kick off actually the debate with more general question, to which I assume we will have a different approaches. Do you believe actually that the digital transformation to Industry 4.0 is crucial for our industries? Do you believe that this process is necessary for us to be more competitive and more efficient? May I start with Mr. Kapuria?
One issue that I want to just bring on for, and I guess that's a part of just the backdrop, that the industry is struggling in many ways. And the issue today is that there is a complexity in the system, there's volatility, whether you're whatever part of the supply chain you are in, you are not very sure of what the demand is going to be. The customers are demanding a price point, they're demanding some kind of luxury at a price point, and then there's a government which is also trying to legislate some issues of safety, some issues of sustainability. Now, all these are the drivers for the manufacturing industry to change. And riding on the change, basically enabling it, is the digital setup which is happening. So the mega data, the data which can be now extracted from a cloud, the issues of how the machines at least are now talking to each other. They have been for a while, where a CNC system can have a closed loop. You can produce components which are of quality. But the issue remains is that how soon this is going to happen. So there is a lot of work in progress. This is going to be something that each manufacturing industry will have to contend with. That's a given. And with that given, what needs to get done is that you need to understand it fully and holistically and make it into a business plan rather than trying to attempt it in a micro way. So that would be my first response to this, that it is going to touch each and every part of the manufacturing industry sooner than later. And there has to be a preparation for it, which needs to cut the hype out of Industry 4.0 and make it more deployable in a way that balances both the virtual world and the real world.
Thank you. Mr. Dima, maybe from more EU wider perspective, do you think actually that already companies are taking an advantage, taking the opportunity actually that Industry 4.0 brings?
I think the question is not if we have the chance to choose between doing it or doing it not. Because it's actually already going on, and as you know, as a German automotive industry, VDA is representing as well manufacturers as suppliers. We are fully globalized, and we are in a quite tough global competition. So the competition is demanding that anyway. I think that's the whole story has two parts. The one is the whole issue on production. And I think in terms of connected production, in terms of Internet of Things, in terms of parts talking to machines, in terms of supervising logistic chains, the automotive industry in Europe, you can say, is quite advanced. I think we are quite a driver in that matter. And then we have the other part, and that's the product. Because also the auto itself will be connected. It is already going on, as most of you as customers, I assume, might know. We are talking about connected driving, which means assisting. But we are also talking about a huge issue on what is happening with data. You have cameras, sensors, and everything. A lot of possibilities are there. That's why new competitors are coming into the car or trying to come into the car now, like the famous Googles and Apples and so on. And that's also why the car industry is actually working together with them. And this requires also, I think, a new, and I mean, software engineers are one of the most wanted people also in the automotive industry nowadays. And on the second part, you can see that very new models of working together are coming up. So 3 manufacturers, for example, are buying for 1.5 billion euros a digital mapping company, like Nokia here, they just did. Daimler, BMW, and Audi. I mean, that's in the German automotive industry the most hardest competitors in the market. But they have to work together on this because they don't want to let the field the Googles and the Apples only. And that's why they have to do that, because otherwise there will be no chance to gain, at the end of the day, also new business models.
It's very true. Actually, I would like to start with Mr. Rosina, but then, we have experience from all over the world, from US and from India. The automotive sector is to be said that is actually benefiting the most from concept of Industry 4.0. What is your experience? Do you actually already feel the impact of smart industry or Internet of Things? And then maybe I would also like to invite you on to have discussion between yourselves, because you have experience, as I said, from India, from US, all around the world.
As has been said, it is already ongoing process. It is nothing new. As you mentioned already, you have been working for our company more than 30 years. It means automotive is our from the past former business with the tires. Then we changed in 2004 dominantly for a car building or a body-in-white building for the cars. And I think it is quite difficult to speak now about the level in terms of Slovakia or in terms of Europe independently, because everything depends and everything links to everything. If I compare, or if I just maybe evaluate the future impact of implementation of Industry 4.0, I have some figures with me here. But basically, what's going on? In the automotive world, there is still the triad fight for competition. This is States, America against Europe, against Asia, different producers. Not be a good sign.
The digital revolution is going on.
Yeah, if the communication is missing, then nothing works well. Okay.
But we heard you.
Okay. But I think I don't have to repeat it. You have heard everything, yeah?
We have.
What's necessary, yeah. So after the few years of experience, I can tell you that's really the impact of implementation of 4.0. And it is not possible to speak about impact only in terms of Slovakia, because really an automotive sector is a very international sector one. And we are one of many tier ones here in Slovakia. And there's three of the production scheme now in the present time is like from OEMs throughout tier one producers, tier two, and tier next steps. This really is a very wide question. If we have spoken with some experts, what are the economical expectations? Because we are, as all the guys, we can take some documentation with us. The expectation is maybe in the figures. After the successful implementation of Industry 4.1 systems, is maybe the reduction or growth of productivity about 50%, which is a huge step forwards for the future, and also is a big challenge for all of us. For example, the reduction of the staff, of the sources, let's say about 40%. Maintenance cost, we expect may lower than maybe about by 30%. It is really also a huge number of money. And not quality cost maybe about a 20% reduction. Logistical cost about a 20% also the reduction is forecasted. And basically the production cost also at all the production we expect about 20%. Which is a really huge challenge for all of us. And in automotive industry is only one way how to become or how to make the business sustainable in this triad, which means this is a really quite a big competition between the American cars. Nowadays you can see some information war, let's say, and some swap of information about some problems with the exhaust, with the pollution on those things. European cars are, in my point of view, on the technical point of view, on the highest level now. And what is our target? What should be our aim? To keep the advantage of European car producers, the, let's say, high-tech level of cars, which we have still. And the third Asian part also is fighting very hardly. And now those three worlds are mixing all together. And now I think is on place certain question about standardization,
yes.
How to maintain some rules, also for environmental things, for example, and those things. Which means there are many layers. If you like to speak about the implementation of Industry 4.0, but basically it is ongoing process we are in, and we have to really implement it throughout the action plan in Slovakia very fast. It's very, very short to say.
We would love to be part of that and work on it with you.
Yeah.
Mr. Daniel, can you share with us your view from also US perspective, but being Slovak?
Sure. So basically, I view any new technology and IoT or Industry 4.0 is basically another wave. Actually has two components. You know, there are new opportunities, which is additional services and business which will be generated and you know, people employed. That's the additive component, but very significant is subtractive components. Means if you don't have it, you will be losing existing markets. You know, we should remember that, you know, everybody from us has things like, you know, smartphone, and not even 10 years ago, the biggest European manufacturer was the Nokia. We had Sony Ericsson, and suddenly IT technology or compute came to the phone, and today people are not buying the phones because you know, it's Nokia or so on, but because of the services and applications, what you have to them. So we saw how disruptive the changes are, and if you don't adapt to new industrial wave, basically your production will be reduced. So there are two aspects: subtractive, that if you don't participate or you are late, you will lose the business, and therefore there is no choice, and you have to participate. And the second aspect is additive, where new services will be built. All these revolutions are effectively platforms. The new smartphones are the platforms where people can plug in ideas, innovations, application, create new services, which was not possible before. And I see Industry 1.4 as the platform. There is, for example, a car which will have some compute capability, and it will create all many services from mapping, optimizations, and other services. Because imagine, automobile will evolve to self-driving, and now you'll be sitting in your car instead driving for an hour. Basically, you have hour doing nothing, which people don't do nothing. So it means within that hour sitting in the car, you will probably consuming new media or doing some work, and it will completely change the dynamics. So Industry 4.0 is happening, and we don't have luxury to not participate.
Thank you. Mr. Kapuria, being also a policy analyst or policy advisor, what do you think, what would be the impact actually on the labor market? And maybe also the trend of relocating production to low-wage countries. How shall we, as the representatives of government, also adapt to this trend?
I think, first, the acceptance is that this is a reality which is going to happen. And one of the largest issues would be the skill base. Mm-hmm. The human interface is drastically going to change. And for that, what would be required is that today the normal or what you think is the workforce would not be the same workforce going forward. So there's a huge amount of effort which needs to happen makers to recognize this and start reskilling. And it's not easy, because it's easier said than done, because you have to have kind of technologies which are going to interplay, and thus to interface in a value-add process is going to be a challenge. Makers need to take cognizance of is the way manufacturing is happening all over the globe as a linear chain anymore. It's now a network. So whatever product just showed the phone, and we all know that how iPhone is assembled, where it is assembled, and where the value is kept. The thought process and the engineering is happening in another geography, and thus there's a total integration of this through networks. So the boundaries, the geographical boundaries, and even political boundaries are being crossed back and forth. That is a recognition that each of the policymaker needs to have and facilitate. So let's look at an auto, and I'll give my own example from my own company, because we supply to Daimler through the world certain transmission components. And some of these components move to Germany. They are then processed, may be assembled in that or another geography, the component could very much come from that place to even to Slovakia, get assembled, and move back to some geography which it is getting sold. And then finally, there would be a servicing part which would happen. So once we recognize that the boundaries are going to be crossed and the supply chains are now boundaryless, then you have to have trade facilitation which sort of takes cognizance of it and actually facilitates it, rather than become restrictive. So I'm not talking about the EU as a bloc, but across geographies. That means there are there are larger mega blocks which are also in play, like TPP and TTIP. So all that also needs to be taken into cognizance, that how these components are going to flow, besides, of course, the data. And today, governments are talking about how to channelize that, how to regulate it. So regulatory mechanisms will have to be in sync with Industry 4.0. And along with this, will have to be in sync the human element. That means the reskilling. So at one end, the governance of putting in the basic rules of the game and the governance around that, and for the policymakers would also be to how to reskill the human element, because they need to be reskilled. Not that they're going to, it's already, I think, in all economies, whether they're emerging economies or advanced economies, each government is struggling to create jobs. So in that sense, better start sooner than later.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lima, maybe from the Brussels point of view, do you think that Brussels is actually ready to not maybe regulate, but to deregulate and to support the Industry 4.0 in this regard?
A lot of things were said already. I would like to add two remarks on this question of how can we keep our value chains in a changing world. First example, we have the same issue actually on another field which is connected. That's the field of electromobility. Everybody's talking about e-cars, especially in Brussels. It's when it comes to emissions, when it comes to CO2, it's a huge issue. Our problem, and we have those cars on the market, our problem is batteries are basically produced in Asia, not in Europe. So that means in an e-car, you don't need an engine, a combustion engine, you don't need a gearbox, you don't need emission cleaning systems at all, and a lot of other parts which are in our value chain are not needed in an e-car anymore. So the question for politicians always has to be, I think, in Europe, if you force an industry into different technologies, what they're actually doing, for example, when they do CO2 regulations, then you always have to be very careful what you are doing to existing value chains, or are we having tools to be part of this competition in new value chains. And there, of course, in the last panel there was debate, discussed the Juncker plan and investment plans, for example. There are some tools which create possibilities. Are we able to create a battery cluster or some battery clusters in Europe, for example, with the next generations of batteries? Coming to connectivity, again, the same issue.
Get Elon Musk here.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's at least his money, actually. That's true. But coming to connectivity, it's the same issue. Everybody has navigation systems nowadays in his new cars. They are run by GPS. GPS is American. I'm in Europe, in Brussels now for 10 years. We are discussing the Galileo project for 10 years now. This is actually a measure where European value chain could be created, also forced by politics. Why has to be there only American data clouds? Why do they have to be only with Google? If we have a digital single market, which we are discussing in the moment, which I think is key for these issues, we have to think about own standards and own capability to be part of these value chains. I think that is what politicians can do. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's clear for the industry, the challenge is how can we keep value chains together. I mean, the big success, I think, at least of the German automotive industry, which is in reality, when you come to Slovakia, when you go to Hungary, when you go to Spain, when you go to Czech Republic, in fact, it's a European automotive industry when it comes to production. The success is the close contact between suppliers, the close network between suppliers and manufacturers. How can we keep that together and also take into account new players in the field, because they will come. Last remark, we are every 2 years doing the Frankfurt Motor Show. That's one of our biggest things we are doing. We had a new mobility world, which was a complete hall only with companies and people, which has, with our eyes, nothing to do with the automotive industry in the past. Like Google's, like Apple's, like Siemens, for example, coming back. Like a lot of startups dealing with digital issues on the transport sector. They are interested now in our motor show because they are connected to the car, they want to go into the car, and we somehow have to welcome them and deal with them, I think.
Yes.
I just need to
Please.
challenge this point, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because, what I was talking about, dissolution of borders, and here you're talking about resurrecting them. So is that the way forward? Because I don't think the world is moving in that direction. Obviously, the politicians are challenged as well because they need to preserve their domains. But as industry, I think bringing down the barriers, whatever be, technology